My parents told everyone my husband was a saint. Now I have to tell everyone why I put him and my father in the hospital on the same night. For the first 2 years of our marriage, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Marcus was everything my parents, Helen and Richard, had ever wanted for me. He was a successful financial analyst, handsome in that clean-cut way that looks great in a family Christmas photo. And he doted on me. At least, that's what it looked like from the outside. That's what it looked like to my parents. To them, Marcus wasn't just a son-in-law. He was the son they never had, the embodiment of the success and stability they'd always craved. They loved him, and in the beginning, so did I. Our life was a beautiful, carefully curated illusion. We lived in a stunning modern home with floor-to-ceiling windows that Marcus had designed himself. We hosted dinner parties where my mother would flutter around, telling everyone how proud she was of us, of the life Marcus had given me. My father would clap Marcus on the back, beaming, a silent approval that spoke volumes. They saw the expensive wine, the designer furniture, the trips to Tuscany. They didn't see what happened after the guests left. They didn't see the way Marcus's smile would tighten, the way his eyes would go cold because I'd laughed a little too loudly at someone else's joke. The abuse didn't start with a fist. It started with a suggestion. You know, Clara, that dress is a little much, don't you think? You have such a classic style, you don't need to be so flashy. It was said with a gentle smile, a concerned hand on my arm. So I stopped wearing the dress. Then it was my friends. Maya is a bit wild, isn't she? I worry she's a bad influence. I just want what's best for you. And slowly I started making excuses to Maya, pulling away from the one person who had known me my entire life. My parents were his greatest allies, his unwitting accomplices. When I'd mention as casually as I could that Marcus was a little controlling about money, my mother would wave a dismissive hand. He's the man of the house, Clara. He's good with finances. Let him handle it. It's a blessing not to have to worry your pretty little head about bills. She'd say it with a smile, as if she were imparting ancient female wisdom. To her, my dependence was a romantic ideal. When I tried to tell my father that Marcus's jealousy was becoming suffocating, that he'd track my phone and question every minute I was late from the grocery store, he'd just chuckle. The man's just crazy about you. I was the same with your mother. You should be flattered. He saw a passionate, protective husband. I felt a cage being built around me, bar by invisible bar. Each time I tried to voice a concern, they would reframe it, polish it until it shone with the light of Marcus's love and my own ingratitude. I wasn't being controlled. I was being cared for. I wasn't being isolated. I was being protected. I wasn't being silenced. I was being guided. And the worst part was, I started to believe them. Their validation of his behavior was a more potent poison than his actions alone. If my own parents, the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, saw nothing wrong, then the problem had to be me. I was too sensitive. I was difficult. I was ungrateful. The first time he laid a hand on me, it was almost an accident. We were arguing about something trivial. I don't even remember what. My voice got too loud, my tone too sharp. He turned, his hand flying out and catching me across the cheek. It wasn't a full-force slap, more of a reflexive, angry swipe. But the sting was electric, a shock that vibrated through my entire body. We both froze, his eyes wide with a flicker of something. Was it horror or surprise? He was on me in a second, his arms wrapping around me, his voice a torrent of apologies. Oh my God, Clara, I am so sorry. I would never ever hurt you. I don't know what came over me. Please, baby, forgive me. He cried. He actually cried, his tears soaking the shoulder of my sweater. And I, conditioned by years of being told I was the difficult one, comforted him. I held him and told him it was okay, that I'd pushed him, that I'd been hysterical. I took the blame because it was easier than confronting the terrifying truth. I hid the faint bruise on my cheek with makeup the next day. But my mother noticed. We were having lunch, just the two of us, a weekly ritual she insisted on. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing. What's that on your face, honey? My heart hammered against my ribs. I had a choice, a crossroads. I could lie, or I could tell the truth. I chose a watered-down version of the truth, the safest version I could muster. Oh, it's nothing. Marcus and I had a silly argument, and he has a temper. He grabbed my face, that's all. It was an accident. I watched her face, praying for concern, for outrage, for the maternal fury I'd read about in books. Instead, her expression tightened with annoyance, disappointment. Clara, she said, her voice low and sharp. What did you do to provoke him? You know how much pressure he's under at work. Men like Marcus, powerful men, they have a short fuse. You need to learn how to manage him, to be a softer place for him to land. She reached across the table and patted my hand, her touch cold. Just be a better wife. Don't push him. You have a wonderful life. Don't ruin it by making mountains out of molehills. A mountain out of a molehill. The bruise on my cheek throbbed. I looked at my mother. At her perfectly coiffed hair, her tasteful pearl earrings, the woman who had taught me to ride a bike and checked for monsters under my bed. And in that moment, she felt like a complete stranger. She wasn't protecting me. She was protecting the illusion. The beautiful house, the successful son-in-law, the perfect family. My pain was just an inconvenient crack in the facade. My father's reaction was worse. My mother must have told him because he called me that evening. His voice was gruff, laced with a paternal authority he hadn't used on me since I was a teenager. "Your mother told me about the little spat you and Marcus had." He started, no preamble. "Listen to me, Clara. You have a good man, a provider. Don't you go around emasculating him. If he's getting angry, it's because you're not giving him the respect he deserves. You need to pull your head in and remember your place." Remember my place. The words echoed in my ears long after the call ended. My place was not as a partner, but as an accessory. My role was not to be loved, but to be managed. My purpose was not to be happy, but to be quiet. That night, lying in bed next to Marcus, his arm slung possessively over my waist, I felt a cold, desolate loneliness that was far more painful than the sting on my cheek. He was the one who had hit me, but it was my parents who had sealed the tomb. They had heard my tiny, desperate cry for help and had chosen to side with my jailer. They hadn't just failed to protect me, they had actively pushed me back into the cage and helped him lock the door. The beautiful life they were so proud of was my prison, and they were the most loyal guards. The years that followed blurred into a monotonous, terrifying cycle. The cycle of abuse isn't a neat, clean circle like the diagrams in pamphlets. It's a chaotic spiral, each rotation pulling you deeper into the darkness. There was the tension-building phase, a period of days or weeks where I felt like I was navigating a minefield. The air in our beautiful sunlit house would grow thick and heavy. Every word I said, every move I made was scrutinized. Did I put his keys in the right bowl? Did I buy the wrong brand of coffee? Did I look at the male cashier for a second too long? A misplaced shoe could be a dereliction of my wifely duties. A burnt piece of toast could be a sign of my utter incompetence. I learned to read the weather of his moods, the subtle clench of his jaw, the way he'd tap his fingers on the granite countertop, the cold, flat look in his eyes that meant a storm was coming. I became a master of appeasement, a ghost in my own home. I'd make his favorite meals, agree with every opinion he spouted, keep the house so pristine it felt sterile, a museum no one was allowed to live in. I tried to make myself smaller, quieter, to take up less space in the world, hoping that if he couldn't see me, he couldn't hurt me. But the storm always came. The explosions were never about the burnt toast or the misplaced keys. Those were just the excuses. They were about power, about his need to feel in control and my audacity to exist outside of his absolute authority. The yelling would start, his voice a physical force that pinned me against the wall. He'd back me into corners, his body looming over me, his face inches from mine, spittle flying as he cataloged my every failing. He'd call me stupid, worthless, pathetic. He told me no one else would ever want me, that I was lucky he put up with me. Sometimes the yelling was enough for him. Other times it wasn't. He never used a closed fist, not on my face anyway. That was too obvious, too thuggish for a man of his stature. He was more creative. A shove against a door frame that left a deep purple bruise on my back. A grip on my upper arm so tight it left the imprint of his fingers for a week. He'd grab me by the hair and drag me from one room to another. Once he threw a heavy glass paperweight, missing my head by inches and shattering a hole in the drywall. He made me patch and paint it the next day, forcing me to erase the evidence of his rage. And then the honeymoon, the calm after the storm. He would be flooded with remorse, or a convincing performance of it. He'd bring me flowers, expensive jewelry, book-lavish trips. He'd hold me, weeping, whispering how much he loved me, how he couldn't live without me, how he was a monster, but I was his angel, the only one who could save him. "I'm just so stressed, baby." He'd say, "The pressure is immense. I don't mean it. It's not who I am." And like a fool, I would believe him, because I had to, because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. And because my parents were always there, a Greek chorus reinforcing his narrative. During the honeymoon phases, we'd have dinner with them, and they'd bask in our apparent happiness. "Look at you two," my mother would sigh, her eyes misty. "So in love. You see, Clara? I told you all marriages have their ups and downs. You just have to ride out the storms." Ride out the storms. She had no idea the storms in my house left holes in the walls and bruises on my soul. Marcus was smart. He used my parents as his shield and his sword. He would complain to them, in the most charming, concerned way, about how sensitive and emotional I was. He'd confide in my father, man to man, about how he was trying his best, but I was just so difficult sometimes. "Clara's just not happy unless she has something to be dramatic about," he'd say with a sad shake of his head. I bought her that beautiful tennis bracelet, and she barely smiled. I just don't know what to do to make her happy. And my parents would eat it up. They'd call me later, scolding me. "Clara, Marcus is a saint. He does everything for you. Why are you so ungrateful? You are going to push that man away with your constant moods." They became his agents, policing my emotions for him. If I seemed sad or withdrawn, it was my fault for being moody. If I seemed angry, it was my fault for being hysterical. My authentic feelings were an inconvenience to their perfect family portrait. The final wall of my prison slammed shut the day Marcus turned me against Maya. She was my last link to the person I used to be. We didn't see each other much, but we texted. She was the only one who would ask, "Are you really okay?" and mean it. Marcus knew she was a threat to his control. He set the stage perfectly. He came home one night looking grim. He poured himself a whiskey and sat in silence for a long time. I, of course, went into appeasement mode. "What's wrong, honey? Was it a bad day at work?" He looked at me, his eyes full of practiced pain. "It's about Maya," he said, his voice heavy. "I don't know how to tell you this. She came by the office today. She said she was in the area. And Clara, she made a pass at me. A very aggressive one. She said you weren't satisfying me and that she could do a much better job." The accusation was so absurd, so completely out of character for Maya, that for a split second I almost laughed. But then I saw the conviction in his eyes, the utter seriousness of his performance. He had every detail down. What she was wearing, what she said, how he had to firmly ask her to leave. It was a masterpiece of deceit. "She's jealous of you, Clara," he said, taking my hands. "She's always been jealous. She wants what you have. I think she's a toxic person. For your own good, you need to cut her out of your life." My mind reeled. I knew Maya, I knew her heart. But Marcus's story was so detailed, and my own sense of reality had been so warped by his gaslighting that a sliver of doubt crept in. And I knew, with a sickening certainty, who my parents would believe. I didn't even have to wait to find out. Marcus had already called them. My mother called me an hour later, her voice trembling with indignation. "I cannot believe the nerve of that woman. After everything you have, she tries to slither in and ruin it? Marcus told us everything. He was so upset. You need to cut that snake out of your life, Clara. Immediately. Family comes first. Family." They considered Marcus more family than they did Maya, my friend of 20 years. They considered him more family than they did me. When I tried to weakly defend her, saying it didn't sound like her, my mother cut me off. "Oh, Clara, stop being so naive. You've always been too trusting. Marcus wouldn't lie about something like this. You choose. It's him, your husband, and your family, or it's her." The choice had been made for me. I sent Maya a short, cold text telling her not to contact me again. I didn't explain why. I couldn't. The shame was too great. Seeing her heartbroken, confused reply was like a physical blow. I had just executed my last friend on the orders of my captor, with my parents handing me the gun. Now, I was truly alone. My world consisted of 3 people, my abuser and his 2 chief enablers. The spiral accelerated. The good periods grew shorter, the bad periods more violent. I felt myself disappearing, my personality being sanded down to nothing. I was just a collection of fears and reflexive apologies. The breaking point didn't come with a flash of lightning or a moment of cinematic clarity. It came on a Tuesday, on the cold tile of the kitchen floor. It was over a stain, a tiny drop of red wine I'd missed when cleaning up from the night before. He saw it when he came home from work. He didn't yell. That's what made it so much worse. He walked over to the spot on the white Italian tile, pointed at it, and just looked at me. His eyes were completely empty. "What is this?" he asked, his voice quiet, conversational. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my blood turning to ice. "I missed it. I'll clean it right up." "No," he said, still in that terrifyingly calm voice. "You won't." He grabbed the back of my head, his fingers tangling brutally in my hair, and he slammed my face into the floor. Not once, but twice. The first impact was a burst of white-hot stars behind my eyes, the shocking cold of the tile against my cheek. The second was just a dull, wet thud. The coppery taste of blood filled my mouth. He let go. I lay there, limp, my cheek pressed against the tile, right next to the wine stain. He stepped over me, walked to the fridge, and took out a bottle of water. He drank it, then went upstairs to change out of his suit. I heard the shower turn on. He was washing my failure, my blood, off of him. He was going out with friends from work. He had told me that morning. Lying there on the floor, listening to the water running upstairs, something inside me shifted. The fear was still there, a roaring in my ears. The pain was blooming in my face, my nose felt broken, my lip was split open. But for the first time, there was something else. A cold, hard clarity. The fog of confusion and self-blame that had choked me for years finally lifted. It wasn't my fault. I wasn't too sensitive. I wasn't ungrateful. I wasn't crazy. He was going to kill me. Maybe not tonight. Maybe not next week. But one day he would go too far. One day he wouldn't stop. And my parents would stand at my funeral and talk about what a wonderful, loving husband he was and how tragic it was that I had had a terrible accident. A single, clear thought rose above the pain and fear. I will not die on this floor. Slowly, painfully, I pushed myself up. I looked at my reflection in the black glass of the oven door. My face was a mess of blood and swelling. This was the face of their love. His love, my parents' love. It was the face of their perfect family. I stumbled to the bathroom, locked the door, and cleaned my face. I didn't cry. The time for tears was over. Now was the time for a plan. The man upstairs, the man who was humming in the shower, was not my husband. He was my enemy. And my parents, the people whose pictures were all over this house, they were his allies. I was utterly, completely on my own. And in a strange way, that knowledge was liberating. There was no one to disappoint anymore. There was no one to appeal to. There was only me. And I had to save myself. The escape had begun. The decision to leave was one thing. The execution was another. It had to be methodical, silent, and foolproof. Marcus was a creature of habit, but he was also paranoid and obsessively observant. Leaving would be like breaking out of a high-security prison where the warden slept in my bed. My first move was to secure a lifeline. I couldn't use my phone or my computer. He checked them religiously. I had an allowance he deposited into my account, a pitiful amount for personal shopping, which he also monitored. The next time I went to the grocery store, I bought a handful of gift cards with cash back. A 20 here, a 50 there. It was a slow, painstaking process. I hid them in a box of tampons, the one place I knew he would never look. After a few weeks, I had a few $100s. With that, I went to a corner store in a different town and bought a cheap burner phone. It felt like a bomb in my purse. The phone was my key. I kept it, along with the gift cards, in the tampon box, buried at the back of the vanity in the guest bathroom. My heart pounded every time I took it out. I'd huddle in that bathroom, the only room without an excuse for him to enter, and I'd search. Domestic violence shelters, legal aid resources, articles on how to leave an abuser safely. I memorized phone numbers and then deleted the call logs, clearing the browser history until my fingers ached. I was a spy in my own life. The next step was a go bag. This was trickier. I couldn't just pack a suitcase. He would notice. So I gathered things piece by piece. A spare set of keys I said I'd lost. My passport and birth certificate, which I managed to slip out of his office desk while he was on a conference call. I scanned them and emailed the copies to a new, secret email address. I packed a few essential toiletries and a change of clothes. Nondescript. Things he wouldn't notice were missing. I put it all in an old gym bag and hid it in the trunk of my car, tucked away under the spare tire. He never looked there. During this time, I had to act completely normal. It was the hardest performance of my life. I had to smile when he came home, cook his favorite meals, endure his touch. I had to sit through our Sunday dinners with my parents and listen to them praise him, nodding and forcing a smile while my stomach churned with a toxic mix of hatred and terror. Every compliment they gave him was another twist of the knife. "You're so lucky to have a man who takes care of you, Clara," my mother would say, while the bruises on my back, hidden under my sweater, throbbed in agreement. The hardest part was reaching out to Maya. The shame was a physical barrier. I had been so cruel, so dismissive. What if she hated me? What if she told me I'd made my bed and now I had to lie in it? After 3 days of staring at her number on my burner phone, I finally made the call. I stood in the guest bathroom, whispering, my voice shaking. "Maya?" There was a pause. "Clara, is that you? What's going on? What's this weird number?" Tears I hadn't allowed myself to cry started streaming down my face. "Maya, I'm so sorry," I choked out. "Everything I said, it wasn't true. He made me do it. He's hurting me, and I need help." There was no hesitation. No, I told you so. Just a fierce, immediate loyalty that I had forgotten could exist. "Where are you? Are you safe right now?" "I'm at home. He's here. I can't talk. But I'm leaving. Soon. I needed to know if I had anywhere to go." "Of course you do," she said, her voice firm, pulling me back from the edge. "You come here. Whenever you're ready. Day or night. My door is always open. Just call me when you're on your way. We'll figure out the rest later. You hear me, Clara? You're not alone." Hanging up, I felt a surge of strength. One person. All it took was one person to believe me, to see me, and the world felt different. The loneliness was still there, but it was no longer absolute. There was a light on in the distance. I chose my day. It was a Thursday. Marcus had his quarterly board meeting, which always ran late, followed by celebratory drinks with his team. He was predictable. He would be gone from 8 a.m. until at least 10 p.m. I had a 12-hour window. That morning was surreal. I went through the motions. I made him coffee. I kissed him goodbye at the door, a Judas kiss that tasted like ash. "Have a good meeting," I said, my voice even. "I'll see you tonight. Don't wait up," he said, oblivious. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, my body exploded into action. I didn't allow myself to think, only to move. I grabbed the burner phone from its hiding place. I took one last walk through the house, that beautiful, cold museum of a house. I didn't take any clothes, any jewelry, anything he had ever bought me. I wanted nothing of his. I walked into his pristine, minimalist office. On his desk was a framed photo of us on our wedding day. I was smiling, radiant, completely unaware of the future. He was smiling too, a confident, proprietary smile. With a sudden violent impulse, I picked up the heavy silver frame and brought it down on the corner of the desk. The glass shattered. I left it there. A single act of vandalism in my otherwise perfect escape. I walked to my car, got in, and didn't look back. I didn't check the rearview mirror. I drove directly to the bank. Using my debit card for the last time, I withdrew the entire contents of my personal account. A little over $2,000 I had managed to save from my allowance, and by secretly selling a few pieces of my own jewelry he had forgotten about. Then I drove to Maya's apartment. It was on the other side of the city in a neighborhood Marcus would have called gritty. To me, it looked like freedom. When she opened the door, she didn't say a word. She just pulled me into a hug, and I finally broke. I sobbed into her shoulder for what felt like an hour. All the fear and pain and grief of the last few years pouring out of me. She just held me, stroking my hair, murmuring, I've got you. You're safe now. I've got you. The first calls came around 8 p.m. Marcus. I watched his name flash on my old phone, which I'd placed on Maya's coffee table like a captured enemy soldier. It rang and rang. Then a text. Where are you? Then another, more frantic. Clara, answer me. An hour later, my mother's name lit up the screen. I knew Marcus had called them. My hand trembled as I looked at it. Don't answer, Maya said, her voice gentle but firm. Not him, not them. You don't owe them anything. So I let it ring. Then came the text from her. Clara, your father and I are worried sick. Marcus called. Why are you doing this? Please call us. Then my father. Clara, this is ridiculous. Whatever little drama you've cooked up, it's gone on long enough. Get home to your husband. They saw it as a tantrum, a little drama I'd cooked up. The shattered glass on the desk, the empty bank account, they meant nothing to them compared to the inconvenience I was causing. Maya and I sat up all night. She made me tea and I told her everything. The whole ugly, sordid story. I showed her the faded yellow bruises on my ribs, the new ones forming on my arms. She listened, her face a mask of quiet fury. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I was done, she looked me in the eye. Tomorrow, she said, we get you a lawyer and we get a restraining order. The next few days were a blur of action. Maya was a whirlwind of efficiency. She found a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Miss Davies. I sat in her office, my voice barely a whisper, and recounted the years of abuse. I gave her the dates I could remember, the pictures I had secretly taken of bruises on my burner phone, the story of the financial control. Ms. Davies listened patiently. Your parents, she said, her pen tapping on her legal pad. Will they corroborate any of this? I laughed, a bitter, broken sound. They'll be his star witnesses, I said. They think he's a god. They'll say I'm unstable. Okay, she said, undeterred. We work with that. She filed an emergency protective order. A judge granted it. The police served Marcus at his office. The fallout was immediate and nuclear. My old phone, which I'd kept turned off, was a wasteland of missed calls and venomous texts when I dared to switch it on. From Marcus. A restraining order? Are you insane? You've ruined my reputation. You will pay for this, you ungrateful bitch. From my mother. How could you do this to us? To him? To this family? We are humiliated. You have dragged our name through the mud with your lies. From my father. You are dead to me. Do not call this house again. You have made your choice. Dead to them. Because I had chosen to live. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. They weren't just taking his side, they were actively participating in his campaign of terror. They became his flying monkeys, his messengers of guilt. They left me voicemails, alternating between tearful begging and furious condemnation. They told me I was mentally ill, that I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. They never once asked if I was okay. They never once asked if what I said was true. With Maya's help, I blocked them all. Their numbers, their social media, everything. The silence that followed was both terrifying and blissful. It was the sound of my own survival. I moved into Maya's spare room. I found a job waiting tables at a small cafe. It was humbling, exhausting work, but it was mine. The money I earned was mine. My time was my own. I started to sleep through the night without waking up in a cold sweat. I started to remember what it felt like to breathe without a weight on my chest. The legal battle was ugly. Marcus hired a team of expensive lawyers who painted me as a vindictive, unstable gold digger. My own parents gave sworn affidavits against me. They detailed my history of emotional instability, my tendency for drama. My mother described the incident with the slap as me being hysterical, and Marcus simply trying to calm me down. They twisted every single cry for help I had ever made into evidence of my insanity. Reading their words, their clinical legal betrayal was more painful than any physical blow Marcus had ever landed. They were methodically, legally, and publicly trying to destroy their own daughter to protect their perfect son-in-law. But Miss Davies was a fighter. She had my photos. She had the financial records showing his control. She subpoenaed the emergency room records from the time I had a fall down the stairs that resulted in a fractured wrist. Slowly, painstakingly, she built a case that dismantled their perfect facade. The confrontation I had dreaded and, in a strange way, longed for, finally came. A few months after I left, they found out where I was working. My father showed up first. He walked into the cafe during the lunch rush, his face a thundercloud. He walked right up to the counter where I was taking an order. Clara, he said, his voice low and menacing. Get your things. We're going home. This farce is over. My blood ran cold, but the fear was different now. It was mixed with a steel I didn't know I had. I am home, I said, my voice shaking but clear. This is my job. You need to leave. Don't talk to me like that, he hissed, grabbing my arm. The same way Marcus used to. You are embarrassing this family. You will come with me now. Let go of me, I said, louder this time. My manager, a kind man named Sal, started walking over. Your husband is a wreck. Your mother is crying every night, all because of your selfish, childish games. He snarled, his grip tightening. And in that moment, years of silenced rage erupted. My husband. I practically yelled, pulling my arm free. My husband put me in the hospital. My husband slammed my face into the floor. And where were you? Where was she? You were telling me to be a better wife. You were telling me to respect him. You didn't protect me. You fed me to him. You are not my father. You are his accomplice. The cafe had gone silent. Everyone was staring. My father looked at me, his face pale with shock and fury. He looked around at the watching eyes, utterly humiliated. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He turned and stormed out of the cafe without another word. I stood there, shaking, breathing heavily, but for the first time, I felt powerful. I had spoken the truth, and the world hadn't ended. The final piece of the story, the part that answers the question everyone asks, happened 2 nights later. It was the night of the reckoning. Marcus, in violation of the restraining order, had been stalking me. He knew my schedule. He waited for me in the alley behind the cafe after my shift. It was dark, raining. I was walking to my car when he stepped out from behind the dumpster. My heart stopped. "Clara," he said, and his voice was not the voice of the charming man my parents loved. It was flat, dead, full of a terrifying emptiness. "You've made a mess, a big mess, and now we have to clean it up." He started walking toward me, and I knew this was it. This was the moment I'd been running from. The moment when he would stop pretending. I backed away, my hand fumbling in my purse for my keys, for my phone, for anything. "You're not going to scream," he said calmly. "You're not going to run. You are going to get in your car and you are going to drive us home. And you are going to call your lawyer and tell her you made it all up. You're going to fix this." "No," I whispered. His face changed. The mask fell away completely, and all that was left was pure, undiluted rage. He lunged for me. I turned to run, but he was faster. He grabbed me, his hand clamping over my mouth, the other arm wrapping around my waist, lifting me off the ground. He started dragging me toward his car, parked in the shadows. I fought. I kicked. I bit his hand. I thrashed with everything I had. It was like fighting a brick wall. He was too strong. My vision started to go dark at the edges. This is it, I thought. This is how I die. In a filthy alley for the sake of a man's pride. And then I heard another voice. "Get your hands off her." I twisted my head. It was my father. He was standing at the mouth of the alley, his face ashen in the dim light. He must have followed me. He must have been waiting for me too. Marcus froze for a second, loosening his grip just enough for me to gasp for air. "Richard," he said, his voice strained. "Stay out of this. I'm just taking my wife home." "I said let her go," my father repeated, his voice shaking but firm. He took a step forward. And this is the part that I will never ever forget. Marcus looked at my father. He looked at the man who had been his biggest supporter, his staunchest defender, and he laughed. A short, ugly, contemptuous laugh. "Your daughter?" he sneered. "You think she's your daughter? She's a thing. She's my thing. And you," he spat at my father, "you helped me keep her. All those years, you knew. You saw it, and you told her to be quiet. You told her it was her fault. You're just as guilty as I am. So get out of here before you get hurt." My father just stood there, his face crumbling as the truth, the real, unvarnished truth, finally hit him. He had been played. His pride, his belief in his own judgment, his perfect son-in-law, it was all a lie. He had sacrificed his own daughter for a monster who was now laughing in his face. That moment of hesitation, of revelation, was all I needed. As Marcus was distracted by my father, I drove my elbow back as hard as I could into his ribs. He grunted in pain, his grip loosening for a fraction of a second. It was enough. I tore myself free, stumbling away. Marcus roared in fury and turned, not on me, but on my father. He saw him as the reason he'd lost control. He lunged at my father, a man 20 years his senior, and slammed his fist into his face. My father staggered back, hitting the wall and sliding down. Marcus kicked him hard in the stomach. Something inside me snapped. The years of fear, of submission, of quiet endurance. It all vanished, replaced by a white-hot protective rage. He was not going to do this. He was not going to destroy another person in front of me. I didn't think. I reacted. In my purse was a can of pepper spray Maya had made me carry. I ripped it out, aimed, and sprayed the entire can directly into Marcus's face. He screamed, a high animal sound clawing at his eyes. He was blinded, disoriented. He stumbled back, away from my father. He was still a threat. He was still bigger, stronger. He was flailing, enraged. I looked around wildly and my eyes landed on a loose brick lying near the dumpster. My body moved without my permission. I grabbed it. It was heavy, solid in my hand. He was still screaming, trying to get his bearings. He took a staggering step toward me, his hands outstretched. "You bitch," he choked out. "I'll kill you." I swung the brick with all the force I had, all the years of pain and anger behind it. It connected with the side of his head with a sickening crunch. He went silent. He stood there for a second, swaying, a look of pure surprise on his face. Then his eyes rolled back, and he collapsed onto the wet pavement like a puppet with its strings cut. He didn't move. There was a sudden, deafening silence in the alley, broken only by the sound of the rain and my own ragged breathing. I stood over him, the brick still in my hand. my heart pounding like a drum. I looked at my father, who was slumped against the wall, clutching his stomach, his face bloody. He was staring at Marcus's still form, then at me, his eyes wide with a terror I had never seen before. I dropped the brick. I took out my real phone, the one Maya had helped me get. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial. I called 911. "I need an ambulance and the police," I said, my voice eerily calm. "My name is Clara Wallace. My estranged husband, Marcus Wallace, violated a restraining order and attacked me and my father, Richard Miller. They're both injured. We're in the alley behind the corner cafe on Elm Street." I gave them the information, disconnected the call, and just stood there in the rain, waiting for the sirens. I didn't go to my father. I didn't look at Marcus. I just stood there, free. The aftermath was messy, but it was a cleansing mess. The police and paramedics arrived. Marcus was taken to the hospital with a severe concussion and a fractured skull. My father had 2 broken ribs and a broken nose. I was taken to the station. I gave my statement, every last detail. Maya was there with Miss Davies within an hour. Because of the active restraining order, the witnesses at the cafe who'd seen my father's earlier aggression and my father's own eventual shame-filled statement corroborating my story, I was cleared of any wrongdoing. It was a clear case of self-defense. Marcus faced a slew of charges: assault, felony stalking, violation of a protective order. His perfect life, his stellar reputation, it all evaporated overnight. My father, thankfully, did not press charges against him. He didn't have to. The state did. My mother tried to see me. She came to Maya's apartment weeping, telling me I needed to drop the charges, that I was ruining everyone's lives. Maya answered the door and told her very politely to get the hell off her property and never come back. My father sent me a letter. A long, rambling, handwritten letter. It was full of apologies, self-loathing, and regret. He said seeing Marcus laugh in his face in that alley was like being woken up from a long, terrible dream. He finally understood. He finally saw. He begged for my forgiveness. I never wrote back. It's been a year now. Marcus took a plea deal and served a short prison sentence. He lost his job, his house, his friends. He is a ghost from a past life. I live in a small apartment by myself. I work as an assistant manager at a bookstore. It's quiet. It's simple. Some days are hard. The nightmares still come. The echoes of his voice, of my parents' dismissals, still linger. Healing isn't a straight line. But I am alive. I am free. I make my own money. I see my friends. I wear whatever I want. I laugh as loud as I want. I am not the person I was. That woman died on the kitchen floor. The woman who was born in that alley is a survivor. I don't know if I'll ever forgive my parents. Forgiveness is a complicated thing. How do you forgive someone for not just failing to see you were drowning, but for holding your head underwater because they liked the way the sun reflected on the surface? I don't hate them. I just don't know them. They are strangers I was related to once. My family now is Maya, who held my hand through every court date. My family is the quiet peace I feel when I lock my own door at night, knowing I am the only one with a key. What if you had to sacrifice for your own peace? It's a question I think about a lot. Let me know in the comments.
Thanks for watching. If you got this far, leave a comment, like if you liked it, and follow for more.